Yeah. So what room did you sneak off to? I see a printer behind you and
I actually hit up my assistant principal, my supervisor, and I was like, "All right, I got a weird request. I'm getting interviewed during my lunch break, and I need a spot, and space is tight. Can I use your room?" And she was like, "Yes, of course."
that's awesome. Well, shout out to her for sharing. So,
Yeah, she is good.
rhyme or free, it doesn't matter to me. It's my bad poetry. Good day, and welcome to My Bad Poetry, a podcast where we take a deep dive into our poems from youth, yesteryear, or even yesterday. Always asking the question, why in the world did I write this? I'm Aaron,
And I'm Dave.
and together this week we continue an amazing streak with our fourth or fifth teacher in a row, depending on when episodes drop, three of which have been high school English teachers. To boot. So, beyond his work teaching the poets of tomorrow, he is a peer reviewer for Whale Road Review, a father of two, with a recent microchap, This Is How We Say I Love You, and a new book from Emerge Literary Editions coming out this year too, titled Who Will Cradle Your Head? Who will cradle your head? For those who
No, the previous pronunciation was so much better. Who will cradle it?
I need to add those
I
ellipses.
I was just running with your intro and I got so many rhymes in a row. I was like, I can keep it going. Anyway,
Ugh.
Jared Beloff, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. That was really bad rhyming. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right? Right?
Yeah, it was a stretch from the start, but I forced it through.
You got it. You did it. You did it.
Oh,
If I've learned anything about poetry, that's how you make good poetry. Just really forcing rhymes and,
mhm.
sticking to a meter to a fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, I don't know. I just embarrassed myself with that rhyme kind of scheme with another English teacher. So I've enjoyed you embarrassing yourself in front of all these English teachers. How about you continue that streak?
It's the one thing I'm truly good at. That and making fun of you. So this is a poem that I wrote this morning. The tree now looks bare. Only a month too late here. Tear it down with fury.
Oh my.
Hmm.
I mean,
Uh,
it's beautiful, right?
um, it leaves a lot to be imagined.
Because there's no context or no meaning behind it. And it's me just being upset that I have to take down my Christmas tree.
Oh, I thought you had like, I thought you had like a sick tree in your yard you had to get cut down.
Nah.
No, great.
Yeah, I was expecting lightning bolts hitting something, and you're like, "Oh, I need to get rid of this tree and have it."
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just lazy.
I thought we were going to run with this lovely imagery of like the loss of nature that Jared writes so beautifully of in his work.
Mm.
And no, you're just writing about being incredibly behind on
Yeah.
boxing up your decorations there, bud.
Yeah. If it helps, it's a plastic Christmas tree that is real gross. We found it for free on
Oh
the
no.
sidewalk.
Oh no.
Um, and we were too cheap to buy a plastic Christmas tree. And I'm like, reduce, reuse, recycle. Let's do this thing.
Well,
Oh man, why
well.
didn't any of that make it into the poem though?
Uh, because that would require me to be good at writing poetry. Or for me to edit or think through anything.
Yeah. Well, Dave, you have somehow brought us into the realm of poetry. And now,
Yeah.
Jared, you get to share with us the bad poems that you have brought to the show. The first one I see here is My Light at Last.
Yeah, there's so many light poems. I don't know what my obsession with light was
Oh,
in
I
high
love
school.
it.
Yeah, okay. So here we go. My light at last. The moon shines with a waning glow through the mists of sorrow, veiling my sense of vision. These murky depths crave the light from beyond, but dark moss is all that waits. Deeper and deeper in the darkness grows in shades of gray, yet ever so slowly a change occurs.
So I'll go back and read my poem, and we can just compare contrast.
Wow. Okay. So give us some context here, as much as you can
Wish I
remember.
had. So I can give you context for the poetry starting when I was in high school. So I was in 10th grade introduced to the Romantic poets, Wordsworth, and I believe it was Coleridge and the lyrical ballads, and we were reading some of those, and I was just like, I could write nature poetry. I love nature, and then for some reason, light just started to creep into every poem I was writing, and of course, being a poet, I had to write about the moon. So, but
Check
but
that
other
box.
than that, I think looking through the journal, this leather bound journal that my mom probably got me, and I filled up. It's like I just was kind of going through. Okay, there's a tree. I'm gonna write about a tree. There's the seasons. I'll write about each season. There's the moon. I'll write about the moon. So it's just kind of like systematically going through each thing and writing a bad poem about it.
I feel like the leather-bound journal really like directs you, because like Aaron's journal was a wolf journal, and that gives no direction whatsoever. But the leather-bound journal, like, you imagine yourself sitting beneath a tree and thinking deep thoughts, and no one will understand how deep and dark and twisted my mind is.
Yeah, the pretension is very thick.
I wasn't gonna say it.
I'm with you. I'm
Thick like this mist of the opening stanza here. I got lost right away. The moon shines with a waning glow through the mist of sorrow veiling. So is the mist is the thing that veiling, or is it the moonshine that is veiling your sense of vision? Because
I think the mists of sorrow, this allegorical mist of sorrow is veiling not just vision, a sense of vision. You got to get it right.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's not just sight, it's something else. It's just deep.
I love you adding this context. This is so helpful.
Yeah, the way you just parsed that with emphasis really brought some clarity to this.
You have a sense of vision now.
Yes, I see this light shining through. Oh man, I love how you talked about like kind of checking the boxes of like poetic terms, because like I swear we've had I think it was way back with our second guest Reagan Petrucha. I think she does dark moss. She referenced moss.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, that's a really common. Yeah,
and then Chickshaw had a Shades of Grey poem, and like it's like you are just hitting the highlights here, with mist, moon, moss, and gray.
That's the beauty of bad poetry, that I think a lot of people want to write something deep, but they end up just retreading the same things, because that's the basic human experience. Like, I'm gonna write about nature, I'm gonna write about the moon, I'm gonna write about just what I see. That's 90% of how I come up with my bad poetry, is just I need to write a poem for our recording. There's a Christmas tree. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I wasn't really, until I stopped looking for things to write about, that I started writing for real, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
When you're trying to just like tree, moss, it's really like you're not sure, you don't have a purpose. You don't have a for what you're doing, and so you're just writing something. And I was like, I gotta write. I have things to write, and I didn't have anything to write at all. So it's just a lot of light and a lot of murk and there's so many shades of gray. And between is one of those words that just keeps popping up. The space between things, which is still it still exists. I purposely chose this poem out of all the poems because I was like, oh, moss. I love moss. I still write about this is one of those things that I do. And look at this baby Jared writing about moss. I can do it better now. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is like a through line from this early poem to what you're writing about and Who Will Cradle Your Head.
No, who will cradle your head?
I don't want to keep butchering the title. It is worthy of being read correctly.
Yeah, that's fair.
But like admiration or just the love that you bring to this nature that we are losing. It's fascinating. And I think that the changes that you talk about in the book is more terrifying than any deeper darkness that change occurs in this first poem. I mean,
No.
like you trying to evoke this doom and gloom here.
Yeah. You should put this first for everybody to be like, look, this is what bad change looks like.
Yes.
Right.
Go read my book now because you'll like it even better.
Right.
All poets put their worst stuff out first for everybody. Like, no. Look, I got better. Look.
Yeah. Yes. So, other than nature, was there something for a 10th grade you that you felt had to be moody?
Besides myself? I don't know. I mean, I think I was trying to play with image. I didn't know how to do it. I think, I'm naming things and thinking, and I thought, oh, I need to make this. For some reason, I didn't have any formal teaching around it, but for some reason I thought everything had to have some kind of moral, allegorical thrust, right? So it's like, this poem needs to deliver some universal truth, right? The pretension is in everything. So it's like, okay, I'm going to write this poem about feeling the changes of life, or I'm going to write this poem about how can I be happy, or how, there's so many of them that are just me trying to but never getting any authentic look at my own emotions. Like nothing, if I'm thinking about the context of who, I was a pretty unhappy, picked on kid in high school who loved academics, and none of that is like there. It's just me trying to pretend that I'm Wordsworth walking around in Abbey or something.
No. Well, that would take emotional honesty and a lot of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And that is not something that 10th graders have.
No. Yeah, I think that's another thing we're discovering in this project is there's a lot of emotions being processed in high school, and they come out sideways. And for some folks, that means really bad poetry.
Yeah. You're writing this cathartic stuff that has no purpose other than to just, maybe even you don't know it, but it's like, I'm just going to write these feelings out some way. They need to come.
So is this second poem that you've given us, is this also from your high school journal?
Yeah. I didn't actually think it was an option to give you a bad draft of my recent stuff. So I went way back.
I love it.
Yeah.
This is contemporaneous. This is probably a little before, and I don't know, but as I read it, I was like, oh, I must have been reading Walt Whitman and trying to emulate Walt Whitman badly. So that Behold the Glory is the title. The crashing rain, the never-ending waves, the sun that so graciously gives life, the moon that holds breathtaking beauty, the stars that inspire us to find meaning, behold their glory. Hold it close, for it slowly slips away as our backs are turned. Observe their beauty, for it changes overnight. Wood becomes iron, grass to concrete. Behold man's jungle. The stars weep, and the beauty they have looked upon transforms into man's domain. But the sun still shines upon those who heed the weeping from above.
I kind of like this one.
This is prototypical, or this is a prototype of what I would write. And, I chose it because I thought, oh, wow, that's me trying to do what I am doing way more subtly and Who Will Cradle Your Head.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
I mean, it's dripping of that pretension that you spoke of, that like the high school self, just like, I'm going to write poetry.
Yeah.
I don't know any non-pretentious high schooler who uses the word heed. Just saying.
I mean, this poem, it's surprising. This poem lacks the word visage. That seemed like, I must have been channeling like Percy Shelley and just using visage all over the place in my head. I scared you all, but you got some heed in here.
You got heat. And you have I'm loving how this is just checking all the boxes, because you have the capitalized man, which we've also encountered with Sean Killingsworth and her poem Against the Man. Now, you're from New York, right?
I grew up in New Jersey, South Jersey, near Philadelphia. And I've been living in New York for close to 20 years now.
Okay, because I see this iron and concrete jungle imagery. And the first time I think of concrete jungle, it just makes me think of Alicia Keys' lick in New York. And so
concrete jungle,
exactly.
Made up.
So has New York always been called a concrete jungle? Is that something that you're trying to evoke here as a high schooler, or?
Definitely not.
Oh.
I think I was probably just like, doing the sort of nature versus man, nature versus city, or nature versus like artifice that you get with like, what's more, you have the concrete jungle, or the canyons of the skyscrapers, and you have, this is the real stuff out in nature. And so I was just trying to make this like, look, we're destroying nature by, valuing these other things and not paying attention to nature at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I read that this morning, was like, oh God, like that, I can't believe I used concrete jungle, which probably I got from like history class, talking about like,
right, Upton Sinclair,
muckraker. Right? Yeah, Upton Sinclair. I'm like, oh, okay, great. Yeah, you're so original. Hating on my younger self, like, what were you doing?
That's where good poetry comes from. Self-loathing, hindsight, and yeah.
I love this. Behold their glory. I don't know. You capture some really nice images. Sun, moon, and stars. Very original.
Yeah. Told originally, right?
Oh, and crashing rain, for sure.
I was seeing a lot of emphasis in this. The first half, you have like ending each line with rain, waves, sun, life, moon, beauty, stars, meaning, glory, close away, turned overnight. Like I felt like I was really hearing that as you were reading it, and then it just kind of died.
Like, I have a list. Here's my list. Oh wait, yeah. Actually, now let me get to the moral. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
But looking at the structure, I think the first half is, even though it's so boring and cliche, it's actually better than the moralistic part.
Yeah.
It has a rhythm to it. Better is a strong word. Better is a strong word there.
It is definitely a very different feeling than the second poem. And you can sense the rhythm. You're doing something intentional there. And the second half it falls off. Yeah, it's not as well. Maybe that's just man's domain, though.
Yeah.
It's the beauty of nature.
Yeah, so this is very intentional.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you currently teach English to high schoolers, right?
Yes. Yeah, I teach 9th grade and 12th grade.
Okay. Do you do a section on poetry then?
Yeah, I taught poetry to start this year. I teach it more on the analytical side, with a little bit of creative writing, but I'm not teaching them. It's not a creative writing course.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So, would you ever present one of your high school poems for the parsing out and the exegesis of your students?
Well, for the 12th grade, it's an AP Lit, so this does not fit within the college board standard. I don't think. And
Yeah.
then, for the 9th grade, no, I just
Yeah, dear listeners, the look on Jared's face when Aaron asked that question was like, how do I say absolutely not, never in a million years?
nicely.
Yeah.
So in their creative writing part, are you having them write off a prompt of like trying to evoke the styles of Dickinson or something like that, or?
I recently I always do try to write your own This Is Just to Say, William Carlos Williams Plum's
Yeah.
poem, just because it's fun to see what they come up with and they can catch the style immediately. But I did something off of like Rat Ode. The name of the poet is Acevedo. Elizabeth Acevedo wrote this poem, Rat Ode, and it's basically her creative writing teacher was like, you can't write an ode about a rat. It's not poetic. And she's like, well, watch me. And so she did, and it's great. And so I had the kids write their own odes to something that connects to their neighborhood, connects to them, doesn't, embodies them in some way. And so they do that. And then otherwise it's kind of open-ended, and kids will write stuff and just show me. And now that they're catching on that I write more, they're like, oh, you should look at this. And so I do.
Nice. Do you get a lot of suns and moons?
No, you get a lot of like, I wish there were suns and moons, because it's like I want something I find that the first time high schoolers write, they have zero concrete images. It is just the name of the feeling, or if there's images, they're not doing anything. They kind of exist as, I don't know, background.
Yeah.
And so I want them to think about, I try to then move them towards like, how do you think of an image that means more than the image, but the image itself is vivid and real, and you can, work on both levels. And they start to get that, but a lot of them start out just like, the depth of feeling stuff that we're seeing here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna need to have that audio clip put on like a soundboard, so that when we read Aaron's poetry, I can just click on my phone like, remember what Jared said? Remember? Exactly that.
Yeah. The first, when we first cracked the journal, the first 3 were like truth and life and I, and it was all these like big thoughts, very definitional, like truth is this, life is this, no concrete images, no vivid picturesque things, just like taken from a Webster dictionary and so
You
I
had
would
a dictionary and a thesaurus.
Yes.
Those were your 2 options.
So I would say a 10th grade Jared had light years on what I was writing in high school, because this is poetic in a more traditional sense than Webster dictionary era,
And at least purposeful. I mean, like you're not hitting your purpose always with this, but like you have an idea you're trying to express that is not, I am smarter than you, and and I know what is right.
So you're writing polemics with line breaks.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the kids, they write about themselves now. It's just like, what are they feeling about this breakup, or about their identity in a very vague way.
Yeah. I love that you picked out 2 poems that, though are clearly written by a high schooler, they carry the same themes that you bring into your writing today. I wanted to talk a little bit about that because you have your new book coming out, and it's in pre-order. Now this will drop on Monday, so
The book drops on Thursday next week.
okay.
Okay.
So your book is dropping on Thursday, and the one question I have to ask. Well, I will hold up my foot here. I wore this in honor of you today. Why Sasquatch?
So a couple reasons. One, a poet friend of mine, Jack Bedell, was writing Swamp Thing, and I was editing this Marvel anthology called The Marvelous Verses, and he wrote not a Swamp Thing. God, I can't remember the name of the figure, but it basically was Marvel's version of Swamp Thing. And he gave Swamp Thing such a lyrical voice, and I was like, this is amazing. I want to try to do something like that. I mean, I'm not going to do a Marvel character, but I'm going to do something that evokes a voice. And I tried to do it with Sasquatch for some reason, and it started to work. And then I was, about halfway through the manuscript and kind of thinking that, oh, I have a manuscript maybe here. And I wrote maybe for the Sasquatch. I sent them to Jack, and I said, Jack, look, I hope you don't mind. I'm emulating you here a little bit. And he's like, I'm honored. This is amazing. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, well, Sasquatch is kind of interesting because he's like, he doesn't exist, maybe. And
how dare you?
and people have for years have been saying climate change doesn't exist. And I actually, then I started to think about, I have this other speaker or speaker type in my book where it's a father like me who's thinking about his kids and thinking about the future and anticipating grief. And I was like, well, what would it be like if walking through the ruins of a climate apocalypse was not me, but the Sasquatch who doesn't, it may not exist. And so it was a way of like, well, maybe we won't exist. Sasquatch doesn't exist, so maybe we're going to be like Sasquatch. Maybe my speaker, who's a father, is kind of like the Sasquatch before the apocalypse. And so I kind of thought about it in that way, and then I started writing these poems. And what's funny is a lot of these poems were bad drafts of hiking poems, and that just didn't work, and they were just images for no reason,
like purpose. Coming upon the dead rabbit and stuff.
Yeah. But the rabbit was a little more intentional because I was like, I want him to come upon something that's endangered and think about it. So the pygmy rabbit is something that's endangered in the Pacific Northwest area. And I was like, okay, well, what would it be like if you found the last one and talks to it? Because it's like this trace of this animal that no longer exists. But then the other ones are just like, seeing the ocean for the first time or understanding what walking through the ruins. And they half the imagery in there comes directly from me hiking in the Hudson Valley. Like one of them, the fire ones, are from me walking through Sam's Point in Hudson Valley, which there was a giant fire, and you can all the small pines are just they're torched. They're basically black, and they'll grow back, and the blueberries were growing like crazy underneath them. And I was like, okay, I'll use that imagery to think about. Because I was also then, as I was building the manuscript, I was trying to think about how do I use Sasquatch as like a spine of this thing, because it's the only through line.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, well, okay, I want to have hope now. How do I have hope? And I was like, well, I've been talking about fires. I went on this hike and saw all this torched. The whole entire mountainside was torched, but there's growth and there's renewal. Fire isn't the end. And so that built into he survives. And then other poems that I'd written and published that had nothing to do with Sasquatch or nature even. One was about a still life, becomes him finding a skull in a bunker. Right. So the Vanitas still life, where you have these candlesticks and skulls, I turn that into him just finding an abandoned bunker and a skull in the bunker. So he started taking over once I had a sense of where I was going. I was like, oh, this is another Sasquatch poem. Like the last one is the first poem I've ever published. Had nothing to do with Sasquatch, but I changed it into a Sasquatch poem because I was like, this fits. It ends the whole sequence.
Wow.
So which speaker in your in this collection is the John Lithgow character from Harry and the Hendersons? I'm trying to listen for that.
Um, I mean, it would have to be the dad character. In the
Okay, that
I
makes
mean, the dad
sense.
who's with his daughter, and he's thinking through. They're looking at the phone screen, and they're going to the park, and yeah, because ultimately he's trying to protect his family, right? John Lithgow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then he
That's
just
such a
starts
beautiful
protecting his family.
concept. I love being able to put like something honest and something that causes me a lot of anxiety. Climate disaster is a legitimately terrifying thing that we are currently on the brink of, or in the first
midst
stages of.
yeah.
But being able to talk about it in a metaphorical sense, but also in a very real and honest, this is what we see. This is the first steps of our deep fear. That's a beautiful way to express something so important.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that was what I was going for with this book, was trying to think through how do I look at it honestly, and not just doom and gloom, but also like how do I think about what I love that exists both naturally and in my own life. And
Right.
the each poem, even though some of them are absurd or weird, and climate change itself does weird, absurd things with nature, are trying to do that same project. So thank you. You hit it right on the head.
Yeah. The having you present us with "Behold the glory" and my light at last, that rather than hitting it on the head, you smash it with a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
Well, it's very dangerous to have you on here with your leather-bound journal in hand and this beautiful book.
Well, I gotta go, guys.
Yes. But I think we may not have found the answer to who will cradle our heads or quite how to say I love you, but we do need to wrap things up. And so, before we let you go, we end every week with the words of a true poet here at My Bad Poetry. And so, Jared Beloff, would you be willing to share another one of your poems with us today?
Yeah. So this one is called Playing with Climate Models, and the speaker is imagined a scientist who's trying to run models to find some hope. Playing with climate models. Tonight, I'm hoping to catch the complexity of a curve refusing to touch its limit. The deep ocean seething, air wicking sweat from the soil's scrabble. Am I willing to admit? The line bends, straight as an ant's trusting scent given by the one who came before. Who will mourn the last to follow as it lays down, draping mold in the dirt? Nothing dies, only energy is given. Last night I sat in the desert, heat written upon the rock's face. Even after dark, its beating seemed to breathe, to suggest my hand, if only gentle enough, could push through to its heart, hold its stillness, wanting to shift out of place. Everything changes, I know. Equilibrium greens each new reality, accepted like algae underneath sea ice. Energy is given, transferred. I run the scenarios again, play them like a scream trapped in a tree's rings. Thank you.
See, that's the kind of hope I need.
Yeah, trapped in its tree's rings. Yeah.
To make a chart beautiful, as you're playing with a curve, that was amazing.
Thank you.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. This has been My Bad Poetry.
Now go write some of your own bad poetry.
Awesome.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This was
Thank you,
wonderful.
Jared. This was
Thank you for
amazing.
having me.
Rhyme free doesn't matter to me.